We're proud to welcome you to the Exceptional Advisor podcast series brought to you by the Investments and Wealth Institute. The goal of this series is to help you better serve your clients, differentiate yourself from the competition, and enhance your ability to communicate those differences. This episode is brought to you by the Investments and Wealth Institute and sponsored by Transamerica Institute. Today's guest is Collinson. She's the CEO of Transamerica Institute. We'll discuss their 20th study on women in retirement, 5 winning ways employers can help their women employees, and women transitioning into retirement. So welcome to the podcast, Catherine.
Well, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So before we get started, for the benefit of our listeners who may not be familiar with you and your work, do you mind giving us a brief overview?
Fantastic. Again, I'm Catherine Collinson. I lead nonprofit Transamerica Institute and its Center for Retirement Studies. We're a nonprofit private foundation dedicated to doing research and outreach on matters that impact people's health and financial well-being, and a huge history and emphasis on retirement and retirement security.
So our first topic today, Catherine, is one that I'm intrigued by. I know that the Transamerica has been involved in the MIT AIDS Lab for many years, where they're fond of saying that the future is female, but in many ways, the past is female as well, given the number of years that you've been studying women in retirement. Can you tell us about the latest edition of that research?
Yes, indeed. And I'm really proud to say Transamerica Center for Retirement Studies has published research on women and retirement every year for more than 15 years. This is a very big area of focus for us in that even in this day and age, even in the year 2020, women continue to be at greater risk of not achieving a financially secure retirement compared with men. We've achieved greater levels of educational attainment and career opportunities than our grandparents and our grandmothers ever dreamed of, but we're still at risk for a number of reasons, which makes this year's report even more important. If you don't mind, I will take a second just to highlight some of the risks. The gender pay gap leads to a retirement savings gap, and unfortunately, it still persists to this day. Women are more likely to take time out of the workforce for parenting and caregiving, and in doing so are giving up income and benefits, not to mention it's that much harder to jump back into the workforce when we're ready to do so. And I'll also put a bigger spotlight on this. You may have seen all the headlines recently with the Bureau of Labor Statistics data that came out that in August and September, 865,000 women dropped out of the workforce. And this is a sign of the pandemic, that the idea of working and running a household and homeschooling and caregiving has just gotten to be so much. And it's affecting women more than it is men, which is actually a big step backward for retirement security for women. And then the other thing I'll touch on that is a risk for us is statistically we still live longer, which means that we need to save for even longer retirements. So all things considered, we're 15 years in, our work is far from done in our research. Our ultimate goal is just to illuminate issues, sort of tell a story through survey findings and data, and do so in a way that can be actionable and empowering for women to take steps, as well as their financial advisors and others that they work with to improve the long-term prospects individually and collectively among women as a whole for future generations.
So our audience are largely financial advisors. You mentioned actionable advice. What role can advisors play? Is it helping women identify better Social Security claiming strategies, or understanding the possibility that that widowhood is a risk that they'll face, and the risk of maybe having reduced income during that period of time? Or what are some of the things that you might recommend that advisors do or think about?
Okay. Well, there's lots of things. First of all, women continue to be an underserved market. So our survey finds that among women who are working or recently unemployed or furloughed, only about 4 in 10 have a financial advisor. that means 6 in 10 do not yet have a financial advisor. So even just recognizing the opportunity to serve women is a really big deal. The other things that we see through the research that women need help with are just some of the financial planning basics. Everything from having a written financial plan and a written financial plan for retirement to goal setting and really estimating retirement savings and income needs, all the way to some of the more specifics, investment guidance, understanding of Social Security claiming strategies. Often we see in our research among women and men, people think they know more about that complicated topic than they actually do. And then we also see, especially now during the pandemic, and nobody likes to think about these things, but there's never been a more critical time during our lifetimes to have our legal documents in place. Things like a power of attorney, a general power of attorney for finance, a power of attorney for healthcare, HIPAA waivers. And these are things, even a financial advisor may not be able to do that legal work. They can at least impart the message. These are legal documents that you really should strongly consider putting into place.
So, I mean, in terms of, there are certain things, obviously women face a reduced pay in the workplace that may not be fixed anytime soon, or perhaps it will be. Do you see things that could go a long way toward helping women at least make up some of the differences that they've encountered in the past, whether it's their salaries, the manner in which they save, the investments that are available to them, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes, and we do see some things. I wish there was a great, be all end all solution. Then we wouldn't be talking about this on the podcast. But the types of things that women can do is just, and it's up to all of us, raising awareness and being mindful of life decisions. And one of the greatest decisions a woman will make would be to take time out of the workforce for parenting or for caregiving, but to really understand the long-term financial implications of that decision. And it's not to say don't do it. That's not the case at all. But one thing that women can do is working with their spouse or partner or broader family, maybe find a way if to dial back paid employment, but at least stay in the workforce working part-time. Because working part-time can bring in income. And the other thing is the old adage our parents and our grandparents taught us that we'll be teaching future generations, it is always easier to find a job if you already have a job. And it's that first job is so hard to find when we're growing up, but it could be even harder to find a job if you are a woman who's taken years out of the workforce and try to jump back in at any level, not just the level at which you left. So those are some really big things. And in even things like budgeting and financial planning, you're in a much better position to make sound decisions, knowing that we all make trade-offs from time to time through an informed plan. A sound financial plan can be a great compass and help us in our day-to-day decision making about what's truly important and maybe what we can live without. Oh, and then the other thing is goal setting can actually be fun. Sometimes retirement is too much of an abstraction, but to at least start thinking about retirement, but also set some other shorter term financial goals which are attainable. And reaching those goals can be really empowering and lift your spirits to focus on getting to that next goal. All the while, of course, encouraging people to think about retirement or an age in which we'll no longer be working.
Right. So often we hear about women who are married or with partners not necessarily getting involved in the finances, leaving it to the man in the house, so to speak. Did you find that in your research, and any antidote for that?
Yes, and it is so frustrating. It's one of our survey findings that just pains me. And It is indicative to what I'll call a societal hangover to previous generations, to your point, where the man was the CFO of the household, and the women weren't involved. And the survey finding is quite telling. We ask our survey respondents who are either married or in a partnership, how familiar are you with your spouse or partner's retirement savings? And women are far less likely to say they are very familiar with their spouse or partner's savings than men about theirs, which is really quite telling. And it's a call to action. A key to financial security in a household is being engaged and involved in knowing the finances and taking part in the financial decision making. And we still hear stories to this day of older women who lose their spouse, who become widowed, and at that point in time are clueless about the financial situation of the family. And generally, it's a scary ending and not a surprise. There's more money than you thought ending. So it's just so important that we engage in our household's finances.
Right. So it certainly in the past, I'm not sure how true it is today, but often we would hear this complaint from women that when they met with a financial planner with their spouse, that the planner advisor would direct much of the conversation toward the man and not necessarily toward the women. Do you find that still to be the case, or are we seeing a change in that regard, that more planners are cognizant of the fact that they need to talk to both in a couple?
I still hear that to this day. And I think it's for financial advisors to be really mindful is that you're getting to know your customers, that you are if in a husband-wife situation, that you are looking at them both as individuals and engaging the woman in the conversation. It still happens to this day. Anecdotally, I'll share with you an experience, and it's a few years now, but it's in the 2010s, so it's not that long ago. Is I was looking for financial advisors, and I interviewed some and through different means, and a number, they saw me as a potential client. None actually, of the three I can think of, not one asked me what I did for a living. And of course, they didn't realize that in some part this was a social science experiment on my part. But it was, what do you dream about when how do you dream of your retirement? Well, I have the specific visions of what I want to do. But there was no understanding of who I am as a person and as a professional who's been in the workforce for 30 years.
Interesting. So years ago, I had worked for a research company that had done research around preferences. And one of the things that we discovered was that women tend to want to work with female financial advisors. Any thoughts about that and whether that persists to this day, that women want to work with women?
Yeah. What I would say and I haven't seen research either way, what I do know is, as a woman myself, is women want to work with people who are relatable and who can relate to them. And so I think the relatability is a really big part of it. Another thing I've experienced and observed through the research of others is women tend to have a lower tolerance level of jargon than men. So explain things to me conceptually. Don't call it some gizmo whiz bang financial term. That's important to define what it is as we read the fine print, really understand what our investments are. But we want to talk about things in relatable terms to our lives and in language that makes sense.
Right. So you mentioned a second ago something that I'm intrigued by. You mentioned that you have a vision of retirement. Oftentimes people retire from something, but not to something. Did your research suggest that women have a good sense of what they're retiring to? And is it only about the money, or is it about relationships and family and non-financial issues?
Great question. And we explored this question among everyone, women and men, in a really, what I thought was super exciting, just posing a question. What does retirement mean to you? And we had a series of word associations and an open-end question. And what's so striking is retirement means different things to different people, but for most people, what it does not mean is the traditional notion of working full-time one day and never again the next. Most see it as an active time in life. More than half plan and expect to continue working in one way or another, but with more time for personal pursuits. So the number one word that was cited to be associated with retirement is freedom. Not financial freedom, but just freedom to live your life on your terms, according to your values and interests and what you hold most dear. And the most often cited things are traveling and spending time with family and friends and hobbies. But we, and this goes to dreams, but 1 in 4 women dream of doing volunteer work in retirement. Almost 3 in 10 dream, not plan, but dream of doing some form of paid work in retirement, which could be anything from continuing to work in the same field, starting a business, or pursuing an encore career. And what's really striking about, and men similar, by the way, what's so striking about these dreams and plans, when we ask about work and retirement, either working beyond traditional retirement age or continuing to work at least part-time, when we ask the reasons for doing so, it's not surprising that how approximately 4 in 5 cite one or more financial reasons, like wanting or needing the income or benefits, but almost as many, which is very shy margin, but almost as many cite what we call one or more healthy aging related reasons. Enjoying what they do, wanting to stay active, involved, keep our brains alert, having a sense of purpose. So this whole idea about continued work is about continued engagement, and it's staying active and staying alive.
Mm. So I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but each answer sort of begets another question. I'm curious about some of the gender differences that may have popped up. I'm often reminded of research that suggests that men are more confident with their investment decisions than women, and sometimes more, and women are more risk averse than men with their investments. Did any gender differences come up in your work there?
We do see some things, and men tend to be more engaged in retirement planning than women. That's a differentiator. From an investment perspective, and as a woman, it pains me to share this. Women are actually less likely than men to be able to describe how their savings were invested. So when we ask how are your savings invested, we see more women say, I'm not sure, than men. That is call to action. We all need to have a strong understanding of how our savings are invested to ensure the asset allocation is consistent with our risk tolerance profile, and to be able to ask good questions. Not to mention, we've got to be keeping tabs on our accounts, logging in. A lot of people during a downturn will say, I'm not going to read my statements. In this day and age, you got to check your statements. There are way too many things. And not that it's going to happen. It's just really important to keep your eye on the store or on your nest egg.
Okay. Anything else about the study that we haven't touched on that you'd like to make mention of?
One fun, I'll call it a fun difference that we've seen over the years, not so much is pronounced in this most recent survey, differences between women and men, but I think are important is over the years, when we talk about retirement dreams, if it's traveling or spending time with family and friends, those types of things, women tend to have across the board higher response rates. And it haven't seen as much recently, but we have seen over the years, women being more likely to say, I want to travel when I retire, than men. And for married couples, I think this is a really important conversation. That if one spouse wants to travel the world and the other doesn't, to have the conversations so that nobody should give up their dreams, but if the woman wants to travel, to find some travel buddies and make it okay to do that.
Mm. I, for one, want to travel, so I think my wife and I will be together on those trips.
Well, I'll tell you, now that we've been through the pandemic as long as we have, my dreams of travel have increased exponentially.
Right, right. But I think the notion of having a travel buddy is good too, because she has some passions that are different from mine that do involve her travel buddies. So I think we can sort of have our cake and eat it too there.
Yeah.
So most recently, you spoke at an event about the 5 winning ways employers can help their female employees. Can you talk about the event and what you spoke about there?
Yeah, indeed. And at Wiser, the Women's Institute for a Secure Retirement held its annual symposium. And you can actually reference the event online at wiserwomen.org. That's Wiser's website. Annual symposium dedicated to improving retirement security among women. And I had the honor of speaking on a panel about 5 winning ways that employers can support their women employees. And taking a quick step back, employers play an invaluable societal role in helping their employees save and prepare for a secure retirement. And it's a role that we should not be taking for granted. Studies have shown time and time again, people are more likely to save for retirement in the workplace through payroll deducted savings, if it's not 401ks, IRAs, other plan types that are available. And employers are also a great distribution model for education. And it could be anything from retirement education through the retirement plan provider to health and wellness education from their healthcare benefits providers. Really important role. And at the conference, I spoke about 5 winning ways that employers can help women specifically. And if you'll indulge me, I'll just share them one at a time. And the first is to offer retirement benefits and other health and welfare benefits. And we've seen the studies that, and the call to action to expand retirement plan coverage among people in the workforce. And this is important, especially for women. And this leads to a part 2 of that is not only offer retirement and other health and welfare benefits to your employees, extend eligibility to part-time employees. And this is a women's issue, and another angle of the benefits gap, or the pay gap, is women are more likely than men to work part-time. Therefore, women are less likely than men to have benefits. So the winning combination of offering benefits and extending eligibility to part-time employees can greatly help women. The third item is promoting the available retirement educational resources and planning tools. And I've been in the industry long enough and done so much research and talked to so many people that especially retirement plan providers, their educational offerings are one of their most important competitive differentiators. They offer them. However, something's lost along the way with regard to employers and plan sponsors really promoting those materials and ensuring that their employees are aware of them and taking advantage of them. And especially how employers working with their plan providers can make a difference is building out targeted educational campaigns, not a one-size-fits-all to all employees, but recognizing that there are different groups within their employee population that they may be able to better reach than others. For example, women or millennials relative to Gen Xers or baby boomers who are at different life phases or life stages. But meeting people where they are can help engage them. And so this isn't even creating anything new, really. It's just taking all the great work that's been done and making sure that the intended audience is aware of it. The item number 4 that employers can do is offering flexible work arrangements that support work-life balance. And now amid the pandemic, that's even more important, where for many people, their office is their household, is their school, is their caregiving location. Never in our history that I know of has there been a greater need for people to be able to manage their work responsibilities and their lives. And the more and this is more, as I mentioned, the scary number of women dropping out of the workforce. Flexible work arrangements are important for women and men, but given that we're already seeing that women have been disproportionately affected, this supporting work-life balance can help keep them employed in the workforce. And by the way, loyal in maintaining talent and institutional knowledge. And then the last winning way is, it's somewhat related to this, but I feel it's an even bigger topic, and that is to support caregiving employees. As former First Lady Rosalind Carter is so famous for saying, there are 4 kinds of people in this world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers. And the reality is our population is aging. With the critical mass of baby boomers getting older as each day passes, more and more of their adult children will be called upon to be caregivers, adult children who are in the throes of their working years, likely raising families, saving for their own retirement, and potentially putting their own situation at risk. So we cannot be mindful enough of caregivers and the need for caregiving in the workplace. And to help illustrate this trend, and it's only going to mushroom going forward, given the aging of the population, almost 1 in 4 women workers, 38%, are currently or have already been caregivers at some point during their working career. That's almost 4 in 10. And this is women in the workforce. So this doesn't include women who have dropped out. These are women in the workforce. And we asked a follow-up question about adjustments they've made to their employment. And 4 in 5 had made 1 or more adjustments to their employment situation as a result of caregiving. The most common being things like taking vacation or missing days. Some actually ended up quitting their jobs or retiring early. So doing something that is so precious and so valuable in our society and for our loved ones, and invaluable, just truly invaluable service performed out of love. Caregiving employees can stay in the workforce if they have greater support from their employers. And there's lots of things employers can do above and beyond offering flexible work arrangements that can help support them.
So you've done a lot of research in this area, as I recall, and do you have a sense of how well employers are sort of measuring up on this front? Are they behind the curve, ahead of the curve, or just sort of just getting woken up to this?
Yeah, I think they're just starting to get on the curve. And what we've seen is a couple of trends. First of all, large employers, very large companies, are much more likely to be aware and have programs in place compared to medium and small companies. And the types of programs, when I talk about things that employers can do, of course, flexible work arrangements are really important. Offering an employee assistance program, and an employee assistance program that offers everything from referral services for care, backup care, maybe discounts on care, counseling services, offering some support, that they have a go-to source if they have a need. And I will share with you, and granted, this is now more than a decade ago, I was a caregiver for 5 years. And I'm like the champion of employer benefits. I had no idea that my employer's employee assistance program had referral services. I spent so many late nights on the internet looking for different sources of care. It was a revelation to me when one of my colleagues said, well, why don't you call the employee assistance program? They have referral services. I called, I said what I need. And within 24 hours, they had 3 different reputable agencies that I could call for help. So that's a really big thing. Another thing that employers can do is offer training for managers so that they can understand and be sensitive to and compassion to how to work with caregiving employees, and to be able to work with them within their schedules and in a discreet and respectful manner, just so that they can be supportive. Again, in my own caregiving experience, I had an extremely supportive manager who is the reason I didn't drop out of the workforce. Working with that manager, was able to telecommute, work some flexible hours, meet my top priority, which was my caregiving obligations, and still be able to stay employed and succeed as an employee because I'm still with the organization. So that's another really important thing that employers can do. And it creates goodwill. It creates goodwill among all the other employees, because nobody knows when a family situation is going to come up, and it could happen. It could happen to anyone, and may at some point happen to everyone.
Yeah, and it always seems like we're only 1 degree of separation away from, either having someone we know experience it or, will. Well, any thoughts? The buzzword of the day has been wellness programs. I'm not sure I don't think you said it specifically, but does some of what you just mentioned are wellness programs, part and parcel of what you just described?
Yeah, and that's another great angle and thing to talk about. And shall we talk about financial wellness programs versus?
Sure.
Yeah, the financial wellness programs have been a really big buzzword, and it's something that employers are excited about, because everybody's seen the studies that people who are stressed out about their finances, it's really difficult to bring their best selves and their best performance to work, because it's a source of stress, it's a source of distraction, and financial wellness and the types of programs very naturally complement retirement savings and retirement programs, so that people are, as they're looking at the long term, they're also taking a holistic view of the shorter terms for their own personal financial big picture. And what's interesting is they've been, the industry is very enthusiastic about them. Employers are enthusiastic about them. However, the take-up rate among employees hasn't taken off in the way that one might expect. And my personal conjecture as a researcher is there is no time like the present to be engaging employees on that. Academic studies have shown that the greatest likelihood of successfully engaging somebody is at a major life event. Because if it's getting married or starting a family or buying a home, that's when people are really thinking about their financial situation in ways they may not at other points in life. The pandemic has everybody thinking about their short and long-term financial situation. And it's the perfect time for large-scale engagement. And I'll add my 2 cents worth that some employers, and this is anecdotally through conversations, may be reluctant to engage their employees because the employers themselves are navigating through difficult financial situations and difficult times, and may feel that it is, uncomfortable. An employer that maybe has a furlough, or hypothetically cutting their matching contribution, or making some sort of cost reduction measure And then say, but we're going to offer you a financial wellness program, and they felt uncomfortable. At this point in time, any service that employer can make to their current employees and potentially employees that are going to be moving on, that is a tool that can help them engage in their finances and better plan, is likely to be well received, especially if it's at no additional cost. People are looking for help, and people generally don't have blank checkbooks to go out and pay for that. And we'll, given two resources, something offered for free through their employer or going on the outside, I think there's a greater likelihood of success now than there would have been a year ago or two before the pandemic.
Yeah. So given that our audience is largely financial advisors, any thoughts about whether they as the employer should be doing certain things like you've just suggested, or they as the employee inside their large or medium or small firm, need to be sort of advocating for this or that?
I think that right now is a time to have big conversations. And with the pandemic and the economy, and it's just dragging on, and I think we were all hoping for glimmers of hope that it would be better by now. And we're kind of in this for the long haul. We don't know how much longer, but to start thinking about things differently, how can we be doing things better? What are potential opportunities that we're leaving on the table? Things that might have just seemed immaterial a year ago that could be important baby steps now. And right now, we want to let go. We want to jiggle all loose change, because everything can add up in a positive way in the long run. So to open the lines of conversation, and we also to think about how we talk about money and how we talk about finances in a way that is supportive, actionable, non-threatening, and without, people can engage in financial conversations without comparing their own personal balance sheets. And I think if we can get better at conceptually talking about things and how we might be able to do things better and share ideas, I think everybody can benefit from that.
Yeah. So I have on our topic list this subject: women 50 plus transitioning into retirement.
Yes. This is a topic I recently took up, and I'll add, I'm not ready to transition to retirement yet, but I do fall in that demographic of age 50 plus women. And it was really enlightening to me as we look at people who are, that little speck of light on the horizon known as retirement is starting to grow closer and brighter, how we think about that and how we plan and prepare for it. And over the course of doing this research, learned some really important things. One is, when we talked about the meaning of retirement and word associations and dreams, the good news is age 50 plus women have have a really compelling vision of retirement and what could be a whole new third chapter in life, a chapter that offers meaning and purpose and being able to continue growing and doing new and different things, meeting new friends and spending more time with our family and those that we love. It's amazing. Many are not financially ready to get there yet. So it is so important that we do what we can to safeguard our current financial situation, continue working as we can, continue saving, and again, planning. And there was one finding that was a couple of findings that are very, shocking or eye-opening. And this is among women who are retired. And we saw the same thing among men. And we think about people living, the opportunity to potentially live to 100, work to older ages, with this brilliant time ahead of us. Most aren't making it in the workforce to 65. Among the retirees, the median age they retired is 63. So more than half retired at 63 or younger, didn't even make it to 65. And we also looked at it, and the findings are similar among men too. So this is a people issue, not necessarily a women's issue. 6 in 10 retired sooner than planned. And when we looked at the reasons for doing so, it was not because they won the lottery or had this amazing windfall. And it was a select all question, but slightly more than half said it was either their own ill health or a family responsibility. Half cited employment issues, employment related issues that suggested that they have that they're that they had been forced out in one way or the other, because the employment issues were either laid off, reorganized, desperately unhappy, or maybe got an incentive or buyout. So this vision of this third chapter, like, it's a wonderful promise how we're going to spend this time, but the entry process is really abrupt. Younger than 65, 6 in 10 sooner than planned, and those types of reasons are all really, really gut wrenching. To lose a job or feel like you've been forced out of a job, to have a health issue, a loved one with a health issue. This is life's most difficult stuff. And that's what we see in the survey. And I think it's so important to raise awareness about, because we're all susceptible to this, and to have a sense that we can navigate through this. We have to give ourselves permission to do so. We have to recognize that there's a transition process, there's a letting go process, but there is promise to, once you get beyond that situation. And I know that sounds kind of dark, so I want to share a brighter note. We ask how the women who are retired are spending their time, and the good news is the majority are enjoying life. They found meaning and purpose, so they've gotten through it. But it's obvious it's not easy. It hasn't been easy, and something for us all to be aware of, that it won't be easy. But it's a transition is a rite of passage from one phase in life to the next. And the more we're aware of it and can support each other and find the resources, the more likely we'll be able to successfully get through it, and really make the most of this gift of extra time, of this potential third chapter in life. And then I have to comment that we saw something in the research that is really important. I mentioned that most are enjoying life and happy. And we looked at this question across generations. So from young women, recently entering the workforce, all the way to older. And among young people, especially the youngest generation in the workforce, our largest reportable base is millennials. Gen Z's coming up, but they still haven't fully entered the workforce yet. Millennials are far more likely to say they often feel anxious and depressed or isolated and alone compared with their older counterparts, compared with Gen X, with boomers, and even older. And I think it speaks to a number of things, and that is, we have this gift with multi-generational exchanges and not just multi-generational workforce, but friendships and communities, and how older individuals can bring a calming influence and perspective and life experience to help those, especially younger ones, who are having a really hard time navigating through life right now.
So I want to go back to one of the things that you mentioned a second ago, and as I think about, again, our audience of financial advisors, if it's no more than a coin toss whether you'll be able to work past 63 toward your 65 or 67 or whatever, it strikes me that financial advisors should be in a position to maybe have their clients fully fund their retirement with age 63 as the finish line versus 65, and that way they would have a best case, worst case, probable case scenarios But in the worst case outcome, they have funded it at 63 should someone have to exit the workforce for one reason or another. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Yeah, that is a really interesting question. And that's a heart to heart talk between a financial advisor and a client. And something that you pointed to is having a base case, best case, and worst case scenario, and a backup plan for the worst case scenario. And we do ask about backup plans, and relatively few have a backup plan for retirement income if they find themselves retiring sooner than expected or planned. And again, with the financial advisor and the client, and it's a hard conversation, but the type of work the individual is doing, the type of industry they're in, the economy, is to be realistic, have conversations, and plan for the unexpected with regard to age at which they may be leaving their current employer. It's an easy conversation if the financial advisor's client is a professional athlete, because we know they age out of their professions long before age 65. But it's harder and even people who are working in, intense, physically demanding occupations, to recognize that 65, they may need to find a new career path long before they get to 65, given the physically demanding nature of their work. Every industry is a little different, but it's an important conversation to have. How realistic is 65 in your profession and with your current employer? And if it's not, pathways. And if 65 isn't realistic, or 67, which is the Social Security full retirement age for many of us, is to think about alternative pathways of earning income, either freelancing or contractor, or setting up a small business without risking your nest egg in the process. But to have a retirement income plan that includes earned income.
Right. So we've covered a lot of ground. Is there anything that we haven't chatted about that you'd like to make mention of, or anything that you've already discussed that you want to reemphasize?
Yeah. The one thing is, we can't understand we cannot overestimate the power of baby steps. And we're at a really, really critical time right now where so many people are financially fragile. The role of advisors is so important and can help people make a difference. And sometimes it takes a little bit of tough love. But another thing is a vision of the future. The pandemic is not going to last forever. At some point in time, the economy is going to get better. And just to keep that positivity in mind in a way that helps make it a bit easier to navigate through these extraordinarily difficult times.
Well, Catherine, I want to thank you ever so much for chatting with us today. It's been a pleasure. I'm certain that our listeners will enjoy every moment of it.
Well, thank you. It's been great talking with you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Exceptional Advisor podcast series. This episode is brought to you by the Investments and Wealth Institute and sponsored by Transamerica Institute. Stay up to date and have the latest episode delivered straight to you by subscribing through iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Love learning about how to help your retirement clients? Don't miss the upcoming Retirement Management Forum live stream and on-demand conference on December 8th, 2020. In this time of uncertainty, gain practical advice on how to help your clients navigate their retirement plans. Learn more about the Retirement Management Forum by visiting investmentsandwealth.org. The Institute stands ready to help you as you navigate these turbulent times with new resources, research, programs, accommodations for candidates, and certificates. For more details on resources available, visit www.investmentsandwealth.org. Transamerica Resources, Inc. is an Aegon company and is affiliated with various companies which include, but are not limited to, insurance companies and broker-dealers. Transamerica Resources, Inc. does not offer insurance products or securities. The information provided is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as insurance, securities, ERISA, tax, investment, legal, medical, or financial advice or guidance. Please consult your personal independent professionals for answers to your specific questions.